All right, I'm trying it again, and I don't know. Let's see what's what. If it's still robotic, if it's robotic, psychotic, or anything like that, then I'm gonna have to blame it on my connection. But I would definitely clear. Okay, that was interesting. Yeah. Every time I try to broadcast live on this particular channel, I have a issue. That's why usually when I do my Sabbath, my turn, I do it on my own channel because there's always some kind of issue. But anyway, let's get right into it, right? Because we've wasted enough time playing with the gremlins. Welcome, those of you who are new to the space, and those of you who aren't new to the space as well. Greetings, greetings, greetings. I'm Chief Yuya, of course, and you are about to join us for our Sabbath cipher. Of course, every first Sabbath or seventh day, or what you may call Saturday of the month, we do public cipher. So this is one of our public ones. All right, so I'm going to get right into it. As you saw by the title, if that came out properly, you saw by the title that we're dealing with a woman of good understanding, right? So there's a couple things that I want to get into with that, and greetings as well to you all, Brother Zach, Sister Manera, Sovereign Needs, Sister Deidre, Kushia, Iman Anuel, greetings everyone, Brother Haru, Mama Sequoia, all right, and everyone else who's gonna, I guess, eventually jump back over because of our little technical faux pas. So I'll test that out a little bit later, figure out what happened. I just had to basically change devices that I was using. So I'm going to get into something really, really quickly, and it's important because it's always important, right? Because for one, and I knew, sometimes you hear us speaking about what we call the covering initiative, right? And that's essentially an initiative that we have within our community where every woman is covered by a man, and every man to some degree has a woman that he has to be responsible for. So there's a system of responsibility and accountability that's created, but also an uncovered woman is a very dangerous thing for herself and for her community, right? Within our cultural constructs. Now, outside of our culture, it may not be a big deal. It may not matter. So, based on what it is that you're aiming and you're striving to do, right? So, one of the things, and I knew we make sure that even if there isn't an intimate situation between a man and a woman, that there's at least a level of brotherly and sisterly accountability between them, right? Now, essentially, when you come into Anu, and essentially, or simply when you're looking to mate, as everyone should be if they're not mated, what we advise, peace, Brother Isaiah, and peace, Sister Padmini. One of the things that we really counsel is that spend at least 12 months inside of the environment, peace, Mama Arlene, before you start to kind of move in on individuals who you may be interested in, right? And that's for several reasons. One, you may come into the environment and there's a man that you're interested in or a woman that you're interested in, but you haven't really had an opportunity to see if they are able to show some endurance in terms of the refinement process, right? So they may be a month in, 2 months in, and you're like, oh, I want that one. And sometimes it could just be because you want to get them before anybody else gets them. There could be some of that scarcity mindset that's happening. But if you don't understand the value of time or timing, then you may jump into a situation with someone and they may lead you down a rabbit hole because they're not in the space for healthy reasons. Oh, and Sister Kashia always says like, so I'm gonna follow that sentiment of like, right, the video, but also please share it, especially because we started a different stream So the links are now technically off, from what they were before. So please definitely share the video, right? On your social media podcast or your text message. I don't care, WhatsApp it, but let people know that we're in here and we're building on some important things. So anyway, so with that particular initiative, we make sure people are covered. But for some who came in during our last cohort, they are now, or some have passed their 1 year mark, right? So that 1 year of like, okay, I've been patient, I've been waiting, I know who I am, I feel that we're being called together, whatever. But respectfully, I've waited my time, right? So there are questions now that are coming up in terms of courtship, in terms of selection, and for a lot of people, especially if you're of a certain age and you've maybe had some experiences, you're 25, 30, 40 years old, 50, 60 years old, and you're like, man, I've been in several relationships and I don't necessarily make the best choices. So I'm not really sure of how I should be choosing, or even though I may have the criteria that's been outlined within the community, within the ANU way of how we select and choose our mates, and even how we vet them and go through the process, I am still unsure because I felt like I knew before, even though I may have been working with different information, which is a critical thing, because if you weren't working with this information, you didn't know, right? But sometimes, and as I've said it before, America has an amazing way of knocking out our confidence, and our self-esteem. So you may just feel like, even though I have the tools, I have the knowledge, I just feel like maybe my own feelings and my own demons may get in the way and kind of mess things up, right? So there's been a lot of questions that people have been asking me, different members, in regards to that, even in regards to like, would you be willing to point someone out, for me, right? So, I felt it very timely on this seventh day of August to really speak about some of the things that create proper balance, right? Because a lot of times we're given certain standards and we're given certain criteria for what we should be looking for and what we should accept or what we deserve. And oftentimes that criteria is based around literal foolishness. It's literally foolishness. But, if you've been raised inside of a system that no one has ever really elucidated for you to show you like, that's not really the best way to do things, then what do you know, right? You're coming in with good intentions. You just don't really know how to move intelligently, right? So of course I'm multitasking. Just give me a moment, but I'm with you. I'm still, I'm here. So based upon that, right, I wanted to get into a particular story that I feel is important. It is important, right? And so we're going to be dealing with some scripture, right? Some biblical scripture, and okay, all right, cool. Shutting some stuff down. All right. So a lot of times when you think about different stories, right? And we're going to be dealing with King Dawid or King David, as many of you are familiar with him. And I would like to see it in the chat. Like, what are the names that come when I say David? What comes to mind? Or if I say David and, what do you usually get? Now I kind of know some of them, right? But I'm just curious as to what's the first things that come to your mind when I say David and, right? Okay. And even though, the video is titled, of course, A Woman of Understanding, Bathsheba, good old Bathsheba, David and Goliath, the doors, okay, Goliath, Bathsheba, Goliath, Bathsheba. Okay, cool. It's like we got a good, I'd say almost maybe equal ratio almost. Goliath. Maybe Goliath might be winning out. Maybe that 9-foot giant might have won out over the Bathsheba story. Solomon's pops, Goliath, Bathsheba. Okay, Kwanda just took them both. All right, that was smart. So yeah, good. You know, these are some of the stories, obviously, that have been shared with us pretty often. And peace, Cassie Derwin. You know, and you know, as a result, there's a couple things I want to address, right? So what we're going to be dealing with actually is David, Nabal, and Abigail. So we're going to be coming out of the out of 1 Samuel, the 25th chapter. All right, and Abigail is a powerhouse. Let me start you there. You know, she has a distinction in the book that no other woman in the book was ever bestowed, but yet she's not really spoken about much. And I think you'll understand why, you know, as we get into it. But I'm going to start just by reading, right? I'm going to start by reading, and then we're going to break down as we go, right? David the shepherd, right? So first Samuel 25 begins with it's a very interesting start. It's almost like Moby Dick. It starts with, and Samuel died. That's the beginning of the chapter, and Samuel died, which kind of leads you to understand that that's a significant event, right? And Samuel died, and all the Israelites were gathered together and lamented him and buried him in his house at Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran, right? So what was the significance there? Remember, this is at a time now when David has already been anointed, or Dawid has been anointed to be the king. And Samuel was the one who told Saul, like, brother, it's not you. You know, like you're not the one. In fact, there's someone who's going to be risen up who's younger than you, who is a better man than you are. And, you know, you got to remember, again, to get the background, that Saul brought David in when Saul, you know, he was tormented by this idea, like, yeah, I'm not the one. I'm not Neo, if you will. And he needed some music. He needed audio. He needed sonics to soothe him, right? Because you remember, this is at a time there's no MP3 players, there's no Bluetooth speakers, anything like that. So if you wanted to be soothed by music, it was all live shows, you know, if you will. So this is when, you know, David came and played for him and was able to soothe the savage beast, if you will, right? So this individual was already close to him, but there was and he was already, you know, once he got into the army, he's making power moves, you know. He's slaying 10 times as many people as Saul. You know, he's good thing. I got this turned off. I'm sorry, just ringers. You know, I always have a lot of audio devices around me. All right, cool. Turn that down. Still hear something else buzzing. Probably my watch or something. But anyway, so, you know, so he's already making moves, and Saul obviously is jealous, right? Because David has the heart of the people, if you will. So when Samuel dies, and they start the chapter with, and Samuel died, right? It's like, uh-oh, because the person who was keeping this individual off you has just died. So that's why when he's like, when it says, and David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran, essentially David took him and those who were loyal with him, and they exodus. They got out of there, and going into the wilderness basically is, you know, they became like guerrilla fighters, you know, essentially. That's the image I want you to put in your head, because that's really what it was. So peace, Sherelle Cunningham. So he got out of there. He was like, you know, let me get up out of Dodge, because now Saul has, you know, there's no conscience there now to keep him off of me. So he goes and runs in the woods, right? So we're going to keep going. And there was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel. And the man was very great. And he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. All right, so I'm going to explain to you what that means, right? First off, a lot of times when we think about this particular region, we imagine and we envision, like a lot of rocks, sand, and rubble, and camels. And yeah, today there's been climate changes. Peace, Albert MGC. But at that time, this was a lush area. So the name Carmel itself means the garden, or place of fruitfulness. So we're talking about a place with lush, beautiful, fertile vegetation, right? And we're already hearing about a man who has 3,000 sheep and 3,000 goats. Like, so basically, this is, this is a billionaire, you could say, in our idea, our terminology. This is a person who has great wealth. And now the name of this man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail, and she was a woman of good understanding and of a beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. Right? Now, this is important too, right? So we have this setting. We're in Carmel, or we're being referenced to this man in Carmel. Carmel is also in the mountains, So from a defensive perspective, like this is the place to be. It's a lush, mountainous, type of area. But Nabal, now, right? Oftentimes, Hebrew scholars pronounce it as Nabal instead of Nabal, which are kind of two different words, right? Nabal means fool, or brutish one, or boorish one, right? So we start to get the sense that perhaps the pronunciation was changed based on his behavior. So he was given a name that had a relationship to something, and he earned the relationship, through his behavior. Now, with Abigail, where it gets beautiful is that we're told not only that she was a woman of great understanding, or of good understanding, but we're also told that she was beautiful. She had a beautiful countenance. Now, if you search through the writings, you won't find a woman who's given both designations. You'll get a woman who's either beautiful or a woman who's wise. But this is the only time we've gotten someone who we're told has good understanding and she's beautiful, right? So this is important, and you'll see why later. And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep, right? Now you might be saying, so what? He sheared his sheep. What does it got to do anything? Well, in that time when sheep were sheared, it meant that it was a time of festivity, right? So when it's like it's kind of like, okay, there's a festival, or there's a parade, or there's a party that's happening, and you see people outside waxing, cleaning and waxing their cars and detailing the insides, right? Something is getting ready to happen, right? So David, knowing Nabal and knowing like, okay, the time of shearing sheep, this is festivity time, right? So what that means, and you got to understand within this tradition, even today, if there's a festival that's going on, it's a time for sharing, SHARING, right? So if a stranger or a visitor or an alien comes to your home, these are the terms that we utilize. You're supposed to feed them. You're supposed to house them. You're supposed to do all these different things for them because it's festivity time, right? So when he hears that Nabal is sharing sheep, sharing, SHEARING. So cutting, right? He's cutting the hair of the sheep. He knows, like, okay, cool. It's festival season, right? So the next verse says, and David sent out 10 young men, and David said unto the young men, get you up to Carmel, up to the mountain, and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. Now, it's important to understand that David at this time is traveling with 600 warriors, right? Not to mention the women he has with him, the children, but he's got 600 warriors with him. So he says, 10 of you go, right? Because essentially he doesn't want it to be perceived as a threat. Like, everybody knows him. David, when I was in Zyklos, like I was not only killing Philistines, but I was murdering everybody. Like David is known for this. Like he goes through an area and purges it. He's not just fighting and holds you at the sword and is like, do you relent? Like he's killing everybody, you know? So just send 10. So that way he'll know like it's, you know, we're good. And thus shall you say to him that liveth in prosperity, peace be to thee, peace be to thine house, and peace be unto all thou hast. Right? So you think about that. He's saying, I'm not coming for you. I'm not coming for your house. I'm not coming for your possessions. Like, you know, peace be. I'm when he's saying shalom, you know, because that's what he, you know, he would have said. He's saying, I'm blessing everything you have. Let it be blessed. So it's important to understand that at this time that David has 600 warriors. He's known for being an amazing, like inconquerable war chief. You know, he's killing bears, he's killing lions, he's killing Nephilim or giants, you know, and then he's going through purging whole areas, you know. So for him to send 10 people and to come with this level of humility, he really didn't have to, but it shows you the king's thinking. Like, yeah, I got all that going, but I'm still going to respect you and your space. I'm going to, you know, I'm coming up the mountain, so I even have to rise to where you are, but I'm respecting who and what you are. So then he says, and now I have heard that thou hast shearers. Now thy shepherds, which here with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them all the while they were in Carmel. And what that meant was when he said, and now I've heard thou hast shearers, he's like, you're preparing for festival. Now I've heard you're preparing for festival. So, you know, it's our tradition, you know. And he says, and he tells them something. He says, your shepherds were here with us. So what that means is that your shepherds were under our protection when they were down here with your 3,000 sheep and goats, right? And he says, we didn't hurt them, and neither were there aught missing unto them. Now, what that means is it doesn't, because I've heard like different feminists take on this piece, Sister Shirley, and they've tried to rip it apart and they just make up stuff, right? So when he says that they were with us and they were good, nothing was taken, he's not saying we didn't take things from you. What he's saying is that, because you got to, again, when you're studying, always know who's speaking, who's being spoken to, and what's going on at that time. So at that time, the area was rife with bandits, right? So a lot of times if you went out with your sheep or whatever, like you would get robbed. So what David's men did was they established a wall around the grazing camp. So no one was able to get in and bother Nabal's, sheep or Nabal's possessions. So when he's saying that they were with us, nobody messed with them and nothing is missing. He's saying like we protected your property from bandits, because normally you might have gotten a report back by now, like, all right, we lost 50, we lost it. You didn't lose anything, right? And he says, ask thy young men and they will show thee. So he's like, if you don't believe me, ask the people who we were down there with. Wherefore let the young men find favor in thine eyes, for we come in a good day. So that translates as Yom Tov in the Hebrew, as you know, means Yom is day, Tov or Tov is good. And in this form in Hebrew is Tov, as normally we'll say Tov with a V, but V and B's are very similar in Hebrew. And so he says, we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh to thine hands, unto thy servants, and to thy son David, right? So super humility, right? Because at the end of the day, it's festival time. So, based on our tradition, you're supposed to, if we all come to your land and to your property, you're supposed to give us something anyway, right? But he's saying, I earned something. Like I actually did something for you. And not only that, you can ask your people. So he's saying your son David, like I've been anointed as king, but I'm even humbling myself to say, I'm your son. And if whatsoever you have, he's saying whatsoever, like, whatsoever come into thy hands, into thy servant. So he's not even like send me some goat meat, send me some this, send me some this. He's like, whatever you can spare is cool, right? And when David's young men came and they spoke to Nabal according to all those words in the name of David and ceased, right? So he basically said everything and then they stopped, right? And Nabal answered David's servant. Now this is where it gets interesting. You know, Nabal was he kept it, you know, he was a keep it real type of person, right? And Nabal answered David's servant and said, "Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? And there be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master." Like, of course, nowadays we'd be like, what's the big deal? You know, but for someone like myself who spends a lot of time on the continent, I can tell you, like, asking who somebody is like it's offensive, right? So like sometimes you'll hear people arguing, and I mean we do it in the States as well, but it's just the swag is different. And you hear people say like, "Who are you? Who are you?" You know, "You are a small boy. Who are you?" You know, like that's offensive. You know what I mean? And then, you know, we do the same thing. You're like, "Yo, who's you? Who's you to be asking me that?" You know, we have a different kind of swag with it. So that's basically what he's doing when he's like, "Who's David?" Then he's like, "Who's the son of Jesse?" He was like, so he not only insults David, he insults his father. He's like, "You ain't nothing. Your daddy ain't nothing. Your daddy's daddy." Nah, you didn't go that far, but you get what I'm saying. So, and then he like really drives it home, and he says, "There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master." So then he calls him a slave. He literally called him a runaway slave. Yeah, Nabal was a fool, but I like Nabal, you know, because he's like, "Look, I don't, you did what? And I ain't tell you to do that." Like, that's basically what's the response. "I ain't tell you to do that. Who are you? Get beat it," you know? So then he says, this is when he's now, and he goes into a really bad direction. After he calls him a slave, then he says, "Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed from my shearers and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be?" Right? So this is when he really got himself confused, because it's not your bread, it's not your meat, it's Yahuwah's, right? So he has this idea like, this is mine. I. You see, the I statements will get you every time. He says, shall I then take my bread? Ain't your bread, bro. And my water. How can anybody own water, really, right? And my flesh that I have killed for my shearers and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be. Which that's not necessarily true, because you just said, "Who is the son of Jesse?" Like, you know who David is. You know, you just being nasty. Nabal was also a drunk. So that was another one of his issues, right? So he might have just been saucy and you know, just went too far. So David's young men turned their way and went again and came and told him all those things. So they went back and told David, like, this is what he said, man. You know, he said, he said, "I don't know you." He said, "I don't know your daddy." He said, "You a runaway slave." And he said, "All this is mine. And I don't even, yeah, you were protecting my sheep. So what? I don't know you." Right? So, and I don't mean to, you know, ghettoify the writings, but it comes to you however it comes to you, right? And David said unto his men, this is when it gets interesting. He says unto his men, "Gird ye on every man his sword." And they girded on every man his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 abode by the stuff. So when you gird your sword, just in those times, the way they wore their swords is that when they were in a more relaxed state, they would loosen up their belts, right? So the sword could just kind of hang. But when they were ready to fight, they would tighten the belt the way it wrapped around, and they would tighten it. So when he's saying gird your sword, he's saying tighten up, put your battle gear on, right? And David put his on. He's like, I sent you before, but now I'm going, right? And it's an important thing because it gives you understanding for what was said earlier. 400 went, 200 stayed. Why did 200 stay? Because there were bandits in the area. So that's why I said they abode by the stuff. So somebody had to stay and watch what they had. And plus they had women and children with them. So, they had to have some protection from the bandits that were in the area. The same protection that they gave to Nabal, right? Now, it's important to understand a couple things with this is that he went right into it. He wasn't like, he said, what? He's like, oh, really? Get your gun. And then he put his gun and he was like, yo, we're going up there. Get your gun. So there's a couple of things with this. And, part of that is like, sometimes people push too far, and they're not respectful of what a person's context. Because you got to realize David is an individual who's being disrespected by Saul, who's like a father to him. Samuel just died. His brothers are disrespecting him. He's being chased around the country. He's living in the woods and whatnot, even though he's already been anointed as king. He's supposed to be the king, and I'm over here living in the woods. And on some level, I'm begging for my food, and I'm the king. Now, some could look at like what he did to Nabal as like an extortion racket, like, hey, I did this for you, so come up off that. But it really wasn't that, because there were actual people who were stealing stuff all around there, right? And they did form that wall. Now, one of the things about when you read some of the newer forms of these scriptures, they really clean them up, because what David actually said was, he said, let's get all those who pisseth against the wall, Now, what that means is a couple of things, right? He's saying in that sense, again, like I told you earlier, that they formed a wall around his particular, his property, around his kings. I'm sorry, around his sheep. So I'm pulling up the piece. So David says, so and more also do God unto the enemies of David. So he's like, yo, what you do to me, you do to God, and vice versa. If I leave of all that pertain to him by the morning light, any that pisseth against the wall, right? So that was the statement that he made. Now, there's two things that means. He's like, first of all, you pissed, you're pisseth, you pissed against us. Like, you pissed on us. We created this wall and you pissed on us, right? And he's saying, I'm not leaving anybody that pisseth against the wall, meaning that every man or every male who's of age who can stand up and urinate is getting killed. I'm killing everybody, right? So, yeah, I might leave the babies, but if that baby is tall enough to stand and pull the thing and urinate, we're killing them, right? Because that's how David moved. Like, we're killing all the men, all the males, right? So that's actually, they took that, like, if you read in some of the scripture, you won't even see that line, like he took it out, but that was what he said. So, but I'll keep going, but one of the young men, this is important. One of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, behold, he sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed them. The men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything, as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. They were a wall unto us both by night and day, and all the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. So one of the servants in the house hears what happens. Like, here's Nabal, like, oh, they can eat it, and get the F out of here, and get off my land. I was throwing rocks at him, right? So he's like, oh my goodness, because he's wise enough, even that one servant, to know, like, we're gonna be in a whole heap of trouble now because of your mouth. So he runs to Abigail, knowing what? She's a woman of good understanding. She'll understand the severity of what just occurred, right? So he goes to her and he's like, listen, they were good to us. They formed a wall around us, da 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 da. And the master of the house, Nabal, has just, spurned them away, if you will, right? And this is an important piece because a lot of times we are in situations where we feel like we're surrounded by ignorance, and we're trying to live a certain way, we're speaking a certain way, we're sharing a certain school of thought, and we don't realize the value of one, right? So Nabal by himself single-handedly is about to get everybody killed, because you got to remember he's got thousands upon thousands of sheep, of cattle. So imagine what his staff is like, right? This is not something that's guarded by 100 people, right? Just shepherds alone, right? And then we're talking about servants and this and that. This is like a huge kingdom. And they're all about to be murdered because of one person's arrogance. Or really two, because David could have been like, all right. But obviously even his pride rose up and he's like, you know what? I need to let off some steam. Samuel just died. It was my father. My brothers are doing me dirty. Saul is doing me dirty. I'm over here living in the woods and you living high on a hog. I did something nice for you and you treat me like this. I'm gonna let off a little steam, But he could have been like, all right, I'll go to the next spot. But also, it was a violation of the law because it's like, no, this is a festival day. I didn't really have to ask. You know what I mean? So you already kind of showing me that you're a heathen. So you get what you get, right? I'm gonna treat you like a Philistine, right? So, but the men, right? So now, therefore, know and consider what thou do, for evil is determined against our master. Important. For evil is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him. So he's basically like, listen, David's about to do us greasy, and not only is he going to kill Nabal, which we would probably be all right with, but he's going to kill the whole household because, like he says, that a man, he's such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him. He's like, you can't get through it. Nobody can talk to him. These people came as humble as they possibly could, and he still insulted them. So he's like, we have to deal with this in a different kind of way. So now, this is important. Pay attention to this one line. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves, 2 bottles of wine, 5 sheep ready dressed, and 5 measures of parched corn, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. And she said unto her servants, go on before me. Behold, I come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal. And it was so, as she rode on the ass, that then she came down by the covert of the hill, and behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them. This is where a woman of good understanding, right? So the first thing, Abigail made haste. Always pay attention to that. She didn't schedule a reading with Chief Yuya. She didn't consult the runes. She didn't consult the bones. She didn't go talk to her elder. She didn't go talk to her sorority sisters. She made haste. And she put together this meal, and it's important to understand putting together this meal, right? This meal meant either I live or I die. That's how it wasn't like, put some Hot Pockets together and, some orange soda and some green juice and, some honey buns, throw them down. Like, no. So even though the food may sound like to us, like, loaves and raisins and that's a snack. No, that's barbecue ribs, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, the good potato salad without raisins in it. It's that a couple bottles of Henny, some Grey Goose, the one with the charcoal in it. Like, it's that. That's what she put together, and then sent the servants ahead of her, right? So then she comes after she meets. So she already knows, she's wise. She knows, like, y'all take the food. I'm gonna know how it went anyway. Anyway, like, if I start riding and I'm hearing screaming, then I'm gonna go back the other way, right? So she came after them and met them on the road. So they ate and was still like, oh, good looking. Now let's go kill all the guys, right? So business as usual. So she meets him on the road, and I'm gonna show you the brilliance of Abigail. And now David has said, surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained unto him, and he hath requited me evil for good. So and more also do God unto the enemies of David, and if I leave of all that pertain to him by the morning light, any that pisseth against the wall, right? So he's saying by tomorrow dawning, all the guys are dead. Any that can piss against the wall, us as the wall, they're gone by the dawning light, because I gave you good, you return to evil, right? Now, it's always important to understand too that David is a precursor to the church, right? And when I say church, I'm saying the church that you know today, right? The dirty, perverted, sick, touching little boys and girls, sexual deviance, directing the choir, just a clown show, that church, right? So David is a Christ figure, but Nabal is the church, right? So you understand the science of this. Abigail's name means nurturer or comforter or one who brings joy. So David, being the Christ figure, represents the heart. Abigail represents joy. Nabal represents the church, right? So here's important. And when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground and fell at his feet and said, upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak of thine audience and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not my Lord, I pray thee, regards this man as Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaiden, saw not the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. So she's saying, put it all on me. Like, forget him. His name is fool. Like, he is a fool, So the first thing to understand is that she jumped off of the ass and fell in front of him. Humility. The ass represents, anytime you see an ass or the donkey in writings, it represents mastery over the lower self. So like when you read scriptures like, oh, Yahushua came into town on an ass, that's the same symbol as a Nebu, right? Or what some of you may know as a sphinx, where it's the head of the man and the body of an animal. So it represents the, Nebu, Neb is master, Hu is light. So the master of light, or Neb-Haru, the one who's been able to, just like Nebuchadnezzar, or what the Greeks would call Neptes. It's that ability to master that flesh or that lower self, right? So she jumps off the ass and she falls in front of him. Now, I want you to understand the representation and the understanding of this. She's cakey, like she's got money, right? She didn't say the black woman is God and stayed on her ass like, so I sent you some food, that should be good, or I know my worth, I know my value. No, she fell to this man's feet, even though he's the one that was asking for food, even though she just fed him, fell to his feet. Humility. Women, I want you to pay attention to this. It's important, really important. Fell to his feet and says, And okay, excuse me. Um, Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand. Now let thine enemies and let that seek and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord. All evil hath not been found in thee all thy days. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee, and to speak thy soul, but the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord thy God, and the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass when the Lord shall have done to my Lord, according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. But when the Lord shall have dealt with my Lord, then remember thine handmaiden. This is deep. This is deep, what she said, everything she just broke down. Notice the reference to the sling. So she's referencing when he slayed Goliath. She's like, I know you. Like, I know you. You know, I know who you are. But here's the important thing. At the time, you got to remember, because Nabal was a Saul supporter. At the time, Saul is still on the throne. So she didn't say, if you become king, remember thine handmaiden. She said, when you become king, please remember thine handmaiden. So a woman of great understanding, she knew that Yahuwah was with David. She knew, like, this is the righteous one here. And whatever evil is done to him is done against Yahuwah. So we're sinning against heaven at this point, right? Because he's the one who's properly anointed. And we just kind of wait in our time until the old regime, like Saul and Nabal, gets off the throne, essentially. So it's important when you pay attention to what's being said. This is a woman of vision. This is a woman who's not so affected by, because what is right now, you came to me begging for food. I'm used to having things. I got money. We got all this cattle. We got all this land is ours, you know, like, and all you got is guns, you know, but, and you're on the run, you know, like, we could send word to Saul, he's over here, you know, but she's like, I see who that guy is. You're that guy. I see that. And please leave Nabal's foolishness to himself. Willfully, this offering that I gave you has resolved, you know, the issue. Just look at me. And if you want to punish anyone, punish me. Right? Now, what David says is really important going forward. And David said to Abigail, blessed be the Lord God of Yisrael, which sent thee this day to me. And blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, which has kept me this day from coming to shed blood and from avenging myself with mine own hand. So he's saying, listen, you kept me from doing something crazy. I was about to wild out. I'm sorry, I don't mean to use these terms like this, but I was about to do something that was beyond my character, because I was pushed. I wasn't even as grounded as Nabal, because Nabal's like, look, I'm the fool. You come to me with it, get out of here. You know who I am? I'm Nabal. You know, so even Nabal didn't allow himself to be deterred, didn't allow himself to be taken out of his place by anything. Whereas David, he gets one word, he's like, get the guns. You know, so it was Abigail's not only coming as a righteous woman, but understanding what needs to happen. She didn't go to Nabal and say, what did you just do? We need to go now. I'm going to go myself. I'm sending servants, and then I'm going to go, which also speaks to something very important. The woman's dominance of her own queendom inside of the man's kingdom, because those servants were loyal to her as well, right? Because of the authority that was given to her by the master of the house. But also the servants were wise enough to know this: Nabal is a moron, right? Let me go to Abigail. Let me go to the one who's righteous, right? So a lot of times you're in an environment and you feel like, I'm surrounded by, people who don't get it, don't want to get it. It only takes one. It took one person, Nabal, to almost kill everybody, but it took one servant. What if that servant hadn't said anything? They would all been dead by the dawning light. It took one servant to say, Abigail, I see you. I know how you really are. I know who the real adult is in the house. This is what happened. And I know you can come up with something to maybe alleviate the situation. So when David says, I was about to kill everybody, and you stopped me. So, and he said, I was going to do this with mine own hand. So now I'm going to take on more sin onto me than what I really need to take on. You see, now always remember that this was a man who was after God's own heart, or Yah's own heart. Y'all love David, right? So you got to look at even his opportunities for redemption, because we don't see that later with Bathsheba. When she's married to Uriah, he's just like, I want to, he's keep sweats on, like, I want to, it's a different situation. And Bathsheba was foul too, because she's over there naked, knowing that you can be seen. That you're right where the king is. He can see you bathing naked on your roof. You know what you're doing, right? So there's a difference here between the rebellion that you see there, and we might look at Abigail's actions like, well, she took, because think about it, you just fed 600 people. So most times in a relationship where, we're under the, the instruction that of just large purchases and things like that, that we come to a consensus as a couple, or at least we inform each other like, hey, I'm getting ready to buy this boat, buy this house, or I'm getting ready to go feed 600 people, so you may see some deductions from the checking account, right? But Abigail knew that there's a time to speak and there's a time for silence. See, Nabal didn't understand that there's a time to shut your mouth. Abigail knew, and we're going to get into that, right? So the first thing to understand, who is Abigail in this scenario? She's the redeemer. She is the redeemer of her people. She kept an entire household alive, and she kept David from violating, a situation because of his pride, right? From getting unnecessary blood on his hands, you see? And you're going to understand even the value of that later. But when we speak about the kinsman's redeemer, she functioned in that situation as a redeemer. And you got to also recognize that we're dealing at a time when maybe women didn't have the same voicing that a man might have had, but a woman of understanding, or like what we call a virtuous woman, had the ability to stand, in a place among men and speak among men because she had understanding. This was not just any ordinary female, right? We're going to get into what that means in a second. So, so like I said, so David received of her hand that which she had brought him, and said unto her, go up in peace to thine house. See, I have hearkened to thy voice, and I have accepted thy person. So he's like, you can go back home. I listened to what you're saying. You're right. And I, even though I may reject your husband, you and I are good. Like I have respect for you. And Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry with him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing less or more until the morning light. So she comes home after Nabal's like, beat it. He throws a feast like for a king. He's not a king. Saul isn't a king. Really, he's the king on the throne, but he's not the rightful king. He throws a feast for a king, which could have been for the King David. He throws it for himself and gets drunk. So Abigail comes home to this drunk and all his fools around, and she doesn't say anything, right? Because in that moment, she could have said, hey, get up. Do you know what I just did for you? Do you know what almost just happened to you? She doesn't say anything. See, there's a difference between because Abigail also not only means understanding, wise, but it also means crafty. but it could be crafty in a duplicative sort of way, right? So she knew through craft, don't say anything now. This is not the time. He's drunk. Um, and the situation really has been resolved, right? But there's a time to move in stealth, even as a woman, even as a mate, right? We're going to get into why. And there's a time when you make your pronouncement. So, but it came to pass in the morning when the wine was gone out of Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. So when she told him what occurred, he wasn't like, "Oh, my wife, thank you." But he became like paralyzed in that moment. His heart became even hardened, even more hard, and he began a certain kind of decline, which we'll get into. And it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal, that he died. So look at that. I want to show you something. Whereas if everything would have went where it was going to go, the whole house would have been dead. Abigail steps in, uses a certain degree of wisdom. One person dies, Nabal. 10 days after the situation, right? Now we could say, well, he was a drunk, so that probably, but it says clearly the Lord smote him, right? So I want you to think about something here. She's married to this man. Now, why is she married to this man? Maybe her father chose him, whatever, but he's got money. And a lot of times a fool comes into money not because of their wisdom or their cunning or their craft, but because they inherited it. There's a lot of dummies with a lot of money. There's a lot of millionaires in America who just come for money. Money doesn't equate to gain, or wisdom. Because if money equated to gain, you wouldn't see so many pro athletes going through these terrible divorces and getting caught up in these scandals where, their mistresses are coming forth and things like that, or just making poor decisions as it relates to their mating, right? So, just because Nabal had money doesn't mean that he's necessarily brilliant, and that's something that's important for us to understand. The brains of the operation was Abigail. She was because we have to almost assume, and I would say let's allow some assumption for ourselves, that this wasn't the first time that maybe she did something that benefited the household to circumvent some of his stupidity. Let's kind of assume it's probably not the first time, right? So let's get into what happens next. Now, women, really, please pay attention to this. This is important. Now I'll go back again. And it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal, that he died. And when David heard that Nabal was dead, pay attention. And when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed be the Lord." He's like, "I'm dance on your grave. Blessed be the Lord that hath pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil. For the Lord hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head." And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. David said, "Man, I didn't have to do anything. I wanted to chop this dude's head off. But the wisdom of those who Yah brought into my life, number one, kept me from having to step outside of character soil." Because David was a killer, but kept me having to step outside of that, and still took care of him anyway. And I'm gonna show you how things really work out. But here's important, women, pay attention to this. Very important. And when the servants of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spake unto her, saying, "David sent us unto thee to take thee to him to wife." And she arose and bowed herself on her face to the earth, and said, "Behold, let thine handmaid be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord." And Abigail hasted and arose and upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her, and she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. There was a lot of deepness in that little part right there. Let's go to it. Why did David send his servants? Why didn't he ride up on his horse himself like a knight in shining armor? He's busy. He's got 600 people over him. He's got to keep everybody safe. He's got people chasing him. Saul's still trying to kill him. And he's also got to figure out his next meal. All of that's going on. But he remembers, like, but this female over here was a powerhouse. Not only did she lead me deeper into righteousness, but she spared how many people were in this? Hundreds of people, probably 300 to 400 people were in that household. He spared that whole house. She spared that whole house. You know, this is a woman I want on my team. However, I'm going to send for her. And notice he didn't send a proposal. He said, come on, be my wife. Let's go. Notice, women, she didn't reply with, I'll think about it. I'm still mourning the death of my husband. Because we're talking like 10 days after the ball time. Maybe we'll give it a little bit extra, right? But this is shortly after. Because he's still in the land. I'm mourning the death of my husband. I have to speak to my elder. I'm still trying to figure out who I am as a woman. I'm still working on myself. I'm still preparing myself to be a good wife. What's all the other ones that people say that are wrong? You can put some in the chat. Feel free, right? The key is that you hear in verse 42, and Abigail hasted. She wasted no time. She hasted. I'm out. And before that, she said, and she arose and bowed herself on her face to the earth. Humility. Not, I'm a goddess, I'm a queen. Because you got to remember something. Nabal just died. So how rich now is Abigail? All of that's hers because they had no children together. So there were no children to receive Nabal's inheritance. Everything that Nabal had was now property of Abigail. She could have been like, I don't need a man. I got money. She could have said that. What do I need a man for? Especially a man who's on the run and being chased around, and I got all these sheep and all this money and all these servants is all mine now. You see, the church is rich. This is why I told you Nabal was the church. You see, a den of fools just with a bunch of money. And Abigail was married to a fool. How many times do women come and say, I want to get into Anu and I love what you all are doing, but my husband is on some other stuff, or my boyfriend is on some, my boyfriend doesn't care. My husband doesn't care, right? What do I do? What do I do in a situation where I'm looking to grow and to expand beyond who and what I am, but my mate doesn't want to? You continue to be righteous. And there is a time sometimes when you do have to move in stealth. And don't worry, because just like David was like, blessed be the Lord. You don't think Abigail, like when she came into the bedroom that day and he was stiff and you don't think she smirked? I'm free. It's over. You know? So you have to continue to stay on that path because most of us come into the reality of the truth by first having this marriage and this union with the fool, right? Most of us come in like that and we feel tethered, like, how will I ever get out of this situation? And what happens is a lot of times we do stupid stuff to get out of the situation and we end up actually violating the law. So like, what if Abigail would have said, I'm going to leave because my husband's a fool? Now, how many women do I encounter? Oh, I'm divorced. Why did you divorce? Because I was really looking to grow and do more. And he wasn't into any of this stuff. That's no real reason to divorce. You just sinned. You just hexed yourself by doing that. Or I'm in a relationship, but I'm thinking about, I want you to give me a reading on should I stay or leave, because, I feel like the ancestors are telling me this and telling me that, and he's not doing anything. You haven't, and for those of you who've gotten consultations with me, a lot of times you'll hear me ask the question, have you had sex with him? Are y'all sex? Yeah, well, we have sex. That's your husband. You're married. You can't go anywhere. Not for that reason. That's not the reason why you leave a relationship, because you're unhappy. Now you're playing the harlot. How many people play the harlot? They jump even from righteous relationship to righteous relationship because they don't like how they're being covered. It's never your place to tell your covering how you should be covered. You see? So the moment they're told something to do they don't want to do, they leave. They say, my spirit is telling me to leave, my ancestors, whatever crap they make up. And they leave with their long skirt on and their essential oils and their head wrapped up, looking just as righteous as they want to be, and they're nothing but a harlot, jumping from spot to spot to spot to spot to spot, because they have a spirit in them that seeks to be fed. What is that spirit? That's the spirit of denial and rejection. It's a spirit. Right? So if I have the spirit of denial and rejection inside of me, and that spirit wants to be fed, how am I going to behave once I get into a relationship? I'm going to do things that's going to cause me to be rejected and denied so the spirit can be fed. Then I go on to the next situation to feed the spirit again. So I just keep going from relationship to relationship in order to be rejected, in order to be denied, with no thought of what the person may have poured into me. And now what they may be dealing with as a result of my absence. I deal with this often, like even in ANU. People will come and go, and they say this stupid thing when they leave. I don't say anything, but they say, I'm so grateful for the time that I spent here and everything that I've learned has been amazing. I don't give a F about what you're talking about. You're disloyal. So if that much has been poured into you and you still leave, you're disloyal. And they never really give usually they'll have a beef with someone else. But then they'll send me a message saying, Chief, I'm so thankful for you. And then I'm going to continue to listen. And then, you're a jerk. I was about to say something else, but it turned out it was a jerk. You're a jerk. You have a problem with someone over there. I'm pouring into you. And then you leave and write me a letter and say, thank you so much, I'm leaving. So how can I ever build anything if disloyal people keep coming and going? You can't build anything like that. If you don't recognize that maybe your assistance is actually needed, this experience is not about you. It's not about everything that's poured into you. It's about you building something with others together. But you have that spirit of rejection and denial inside of you. So you come in, you fabricate situations so that can happen, and then you say, see, that's why I have to go over here. See, that's why I have to do my own thing. That's why I have to leave. You're nothing but a harlot. That's what a harlot is. Or some might call you, I'll just say harlot. But that's where the promiscuity comes in, you see? Male and female alike. I'm not just talking about women. But one of the important things is that, like I said, she hates it. Why? I'm uncovered. And even when I was covered by the fool. So how much did I miss out on? I missed out on so much that I had to end up being the redeemer for the house. When he should have been the redeemer, he should have gotten good with David and said, well, this young man's going to be the king soon. Let me get in good with him. Let me create an alliance with him. He didn't do it. So I had to end up being the Messiah for the entire household. And I'm uncovered. And that's not necessarily something that I want to do. Because one thing you got to remember, when she left, like it says, she left with 5 of her maidens. Read other stories in the book, and you'll see that when women join into men, they may have had 1 maiden, at tops 2. She had 5. So consider how much money she had. But it wasn't about, see, the church. The money and the riches and all those things that Nabal had were things of the world. So sometimes we'll judge ourselves by that. We'll say, I have this, I got the car, I got the job, I got this, I got that, I got that, I got that. No one can tell me anything because I'm judging myself and I'm gauging my value based on what society is telling me my value is. You see? So she could have said, I got 5 handmaidens I'm moving with. That's not even counting the ones that's back home, right? And there's another thing, a lot of times that causes a woman not to hasten. Well, if you come under David, everything that you have is now under his presiding. So now what was once Nabal's, which now was transferred to you, is now transferred to David. So how many women will say, I'm not going to jump off this mule. I'm not going to prostrate myself. I'm not going to humble myself, prostrate myself, and humble myself to him because I have my 401k, I got, my savings account, I got my crypto investments, I got my stock investments, I have all this property I own, this, that. I'm not giving that to him. But she understood the detriment and the problem of being an uncovered woman. And she ran into a situation where not only, because you remember, David was also good looking. He's wise, he's good looking, he can fight. I'm beautiful and I'm wise, right? So this is a real power couple because they both were submissive to the will of Yah. You see, it wasn't like you got money or you got the army, I got money. That's the power couple. The power couple was we're both wise in the ways of Yah. That's what makes this a beautiful union, you see. So a lot of times men may come across your path and you may pass that powerful man or that David or that Messiah or that Redeemer or that covering that could be there because you're looking for the wrong things. And you have that spirit within you that's keeping you held back in a strong sense. Because here's an important thing to understand. When we look at verse, we'll say 35, right? No. We'll go down further. I'm sorry. We'll look at verse 42. And Abigail hasted and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her. And she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. Then it says, David also took Ahinoam, I always say that wrong, of Jezreel. And they were also both of them his wives. But Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Phalti, the son of Laish, which was of Gailim, right? So remember, Saul had given Michal, his daughter Michal to David. It was like, you can marry my daughter. And then reneged on it and was like, but that was his wife. So Saul divorced them and gave her to someone else. So we already counting 3 women already. So after he went and took Abigail, he also then took Ahinoam, right? 2 women at the same time, practically. So let's look at the idea that might have been in the psyche. Abigail could have been sitting somewhere like, I'm important. I got money now. I kept David from sinning. I'm beautiful. I have understanding. I would be a blessing to his house. He would, to have a woman like me, she could go through the whole thing. And he's like, yeah, come on. Oh, and you too. So what could have went through Abigail's head? Wait, I thought I was, I thought you were going to drop this whole culture of plural marriage for me because I'm so great, because I'm so wonderful. Because David also took on other wives after that. And one of the things is you learn things about all of David's children. They were all kind of dysfunctional. But the most righteous child he had, or children, were the ones he had with Abigail. They weren't the ones that were fighting for the throne or anything like that, but they were actually the most spiritual, righteous ones that he had out of all the children he had with all his wives, right? So that says something too. Like, she knew to play her position, keep it low, and she was able to create this beautiful legacy with this man, right? But again, I want to focus on the hasten part. A lot of times, we will put a lot of obstacles in the way of what it is that we're supposed to receive, what it is that we're supposed to do in terms of mating, because of reasons that often were taught to us. So it's not that it's for nefarious reasons, but sometimes people just give us wrong guidance. And oh, well, before you marry, you got to spend some time by yourself. You got to learn yourself. You got out of a relationship a while ago. You need to, 5 years to stay by yourself. This, that, and the third, right? We can also assume that Abigail didn't come as a virgin. Now, what does that mean when I say she didn't come as a virgin? She probably wasn't very young, and she probably had already been entered into. So, and this is where it gets rough for some of y'all. David's not going to break his back for this woman because he recognizes, I'm the prize, you're not the prize, because you're a widow and you've been with this idiot. You didn't have this fool pumping into you for however long. So you coming into my situation is a cleanup. So come on, be my wife. Not, oh, you're so beautiful. And then, even though you're dysfunctional, you got this, that, and you did sneak behind your husband's back. You did take your husband's money. You did da 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 da. But come be my wife. No, just come on. You know what's wrong with you. I know what's wrong with you. But I'm also a little psychotic too, because I was about to kill everybody off of some words. Off of some he say, she say. So we both got our issues, but this is where you are fully redeemed because I am the Christ figure. This is where you connect with me again. Just going through some of the different parts. One of the things to understand is that when you hear like people say, well, you got to spend some time with yourself, or you have to get ready, or women say it all the time, I'm trying to get ready for courtship or get ready for marriage. What are you doing exactly? Because if you were not raised in the truth, what tools are you using to prepare yourself to be in the truth? It never works, right? So either, like I said, some women will say it because, there are women who run from having any level of connection with male authority. I see it in memes all the time. Women can get together and, us single mothers, and we can form communes and we can raise the children. You do anything to stay away from a man. Whereas there used to be the strong cat culture, now the dog culture is emerging more because I'd rather, and that's just women who want masculine energy. Yeah, I got 2 big giant dogs in my house and I drive a big old truck. Anything to avoid submitting to a man, you see. But the truth is, if you weren't raised in the truth, how do you gauge your readiness? What tools do you use to say, now I'm ready for a man? You can't. So before you start coming up with silly answers in your head, you can't. It's impossible. So despite Abigail coming from a dysfunctional marriage, she didn't say, yeah, I hear what David said, but give me some time to. David's moving. Man, I'm on the run. I'm moving. I'm going to be king soon, but I'm on the run. Either you're coming or you're not. But the thing that's important about that is that the way you prepare for mating, the way you prepare for marriage is by way of your father. Your father's job is to prepare you to be a mate to someone. Now, it's a blessing if you can find a woman like that. That's a woman you wife immediately, because chances are, yeah, you are getting a virgin. He's kept her dignity. He's kept her sacred, and he's prepared her to be a proper wife. That's one you want. But are you worthy of that? So this is where the balance comes in. We may describe the attributes of David and we say, well, he was this, he was that, as so many women do. I want a man who's righteous, who's tall, who's got swagger, who's got this, who's got that. But are you the proper match are you Abigail? You just described David. Are you Abigail? Right? So if your father did not prepare you to properly be in a household, we're going to be bouncing between a couple points here. Who prepares you? Your aunties? No, because any auntie with sense would know to keep her mouth shut. Your mama's probably single, because just the fact that you weren't prepared by your father already tells me, here's something easy. This is a rough one. If I meet you and you're 30 and you're single, I already know who your father is. I already know. I already know you were raised up in foolishness. So even when I'm reading scriptures like this, I already know if you heard these scriptures, you heard them from the perspective of a Christian and not from an ancient Hebraic perspective. I know you haven't, right? So you might throw something back at me. Well, like, I'm waiting because the Bible says the man that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. Yeah, you heard that from a Christian who didn't, David didn't find Abigail. Abigail ran out on the road and met him. Yo, boom, here, look, stop, please. She made herself known because, number one, I'm not necessarily what a person would look at for marriage. I'm married and maybe I'm of a certain age. I'm not a virgin, yada, yada, yada. So I have to make myself known. I can't tell you how many women sit back. They come to me for consultation. I want a husband. I want to be mated. Okay, well, what are you doing? Are you making yourself known? Are you putting in courtship papers on brothers? Are you? No, I was raised not to do that. Oh, you're going to be alone for the rest of your life then. Because the brothers you're looking at after a certain age are building empires. They don't have time to be chasing you and trying to figure out your hints, especially in a Me Too environment. Nobody's playing with you like that, right? So you have to make what it is that you intend on very clear. And I knew we submit courtship papers. Boom. All right, I want to court you. I want to see if there's compatibility for marriage. There's no flirting. Nobody has time. It's silly, right? So one of the things that we go to, if your father did not prepare you for marriage, then who prepares you for marriage? We might say, my ancestors, Yah. We could go through all of the ones that are not immediately tangible. I'm gonna tell you, here's the secret. If your father has not prepared you for marriage, the individual that prepares you for marriage is your husband. That's how that works. So if I'm a woman and I'm single and I'm saying I want to be mated, but I feel like I need to prepare, I don't know this, or I'm that. How do I get right? I join a household. I get married. On the job training. That's how, because remember, the father hands the daughter to the would-be husband. You see, so he's prepared her. He hands her over to him to be formed, to be shaped in his image. So if the father has not done that, then now the husband serves as father and former, and maker, and shaper, and potter. Right? Now, that's where the spirit of the harlot comes in. The harlot, as soon as you bring her into your space and you try to form her, she leaves. Oh, no, you ain't going to tell me what to do. Oh, no, you trying to control me. You trying to da. And what does she do? She goes to the next house. She goes to the next house. Then you talk to her and you say, how many righteous men have you been married to? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like she's just had, well, I'm just saying, but she's had all of these different experiences because of the fact that she's unwilling to be formed. Now, sometimes you meet a woman who is of a certain age and she's just really resistant to forming at that point. So what can you really do? Nothing. You leave her there to just rot as a piece of hard clay. You see, but Abigail moved with haste. There was no excuses. And the first thing she did was she fell to her face. What did that mean? I'm rich, I got bread, I got servants, I got this, I got that. But she humbled herself. She got on her ass and she, her animal. She got on her jackass and she went to David, right? She said, well, he got to come get me. He got to carry me through the threshold. I'm humble. I understand the value of being covered, and I don't want to be covered 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day. I don't want to be uncovered. It's that critical to be covered by a man. So a lot of times when women are like, or guys or men, how do I know who's the one? Well, stop watching Disney movies. That's where you begin. You know who the one is? The righteous one. That's it. If a righteous woman puts in papers on, he says, I want to be with the righteous woman. Period. If a righteous man comes along, I don't care. Yeah, but I don't like how this is shaped on him. His beard got spotches in it. He's got a gut. Is he righteous? Then what's the problem? What criteria are you using to judge this individual? I guarantee you're judging him like Nabal would. Who are you? Who's the son of this? Who's that? You know how much money I got? You're using secular criteria to judge this person when you should be using the criteria of Yah. Is the person righteous? If the guy is righteous, there's really nothing else to talk about. That's your husband. Go. Bye. Because in a Disney wedding or a Disney relationship, your whole relationship experience is centered around each other. In a righteous relationship, you recognize the relationship as a tool to get closer to a third party, which is Yah. So it's saying really, I'm not going to obsess over the small things. Oh, the sister's too tall. The sister's too short. She's this, that, she puts too much pepper in it. Is she righteous? Okay, she's for me. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. Get on your donkey. Let's go. Right? So that's a large part of it. Here's a couple of things, a couple of little notes I put down. One of the things about Abigail and her understanding and her wisdom is that she recognized what David had the capacity to be and the capacity to do. Proverbs 9 and 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but a fool despises knowledge and instruction. You see, she already had the fear of the Lord, and that's why she was able to achieve wisdom and then achieve that good understanding. A wise man, knows that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. Of the holy is understanding, right? So that was the first thing. She was able to use that. She knew how to avoid clashes. When David was ready to catch wreck, she knew this thing's about to get turned up in a minute. And, we look at Proverbs 14:16. A wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but the fool raggeth and is confident. So what is the ragged and confident? Like, let him come. Let him come. I often say that about the Negro male ego. It's similar. We just feel we can knock everybody out. I've seen so many people get hurt behind that Negro male ego. I wish that cop would, all right, take that badge off. Let's see what's up. Yeah, well, he's in the gym all the time. And he's a cop, he's a sucker and all that, but he's physically trained, and you just stay on the block all day, doing nothing. You're not even doing push-ups or pull-ups on the fire escape. He's gonna knock you out, because a fool rages, but a wise person knows how to avoid conflict when it's unnecessary. Her quietness in terms of her ability to kind of come to a resolution without making a whole bunch of noise. A fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards. It's Proverbs 29 and 11, right? Everything didn't need to be said. She waited till everything was done and then told Nabal the next day, boom, this is what just happened. And that level of strength and righteousness and power in her paralyzed him. His heart turned stone. Like, I'm in the presence of greatness, and all I'm gonna do is freeze up. Common thing that happens in relationships. People will leave, or sometimes you may put in courtship papers on someone, and you might get turned down, not because they don't like you, but because they know that they're not on your level. They know that what's going to be required of them is going to be too much, so they get frozen in fear. They get paralyzed, She knew how to take her understanding and apply it forward. She just wasn't some wise, deep, conscious queen, if you will. She offered that to David. She knew, I understand David, I understand the ball, I understand the situation. Let me put this into action, right? So we look at Proverbs 10:5. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son, but he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causes shame, right? So she knew there's a time when to move and there's a time, for inaction, but certainly this is a time for action, right? Another critical thing is you got to look at what she came off with. She came off with all the Nabal stuff. She came off married to the king. Got, obviously that, and she came off with being able to keep her life and the lives of all the people around her. We look at Proverbs 3:35. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. So even when she went to David and was like, listen, if anything, count me as Nabal. Like, he's a fool. Just take me. Count me as Nabal. We'll be the fools, but everyone else, please spare. Right? So it's that, again, the wisdom which allows you to separate from the foolish becomes a critical thing, again, when we speak about mating, when we speak about relationships, because sometimes we're taking counsel from the foolish. We haven't realized that these people, the church, Nabal, who's telling us, oh, he's got to have this, he's got to be making at least $150K a year. He's got to have 6 bank accounts. He's got to have, I've heard some of the most silliest things, and often from people. You'll have a sister who's, she's wearing a bunch of designer tags, and she sends you a picture and she's in a project hallway. And she's telling you all the things that you got to have in order to be with her. Don't be a cheap date. You're in a project hallway. What are you talking about? A lot of times the criteria is laughable. It's like, what world are you living in? Or you're 5'3" and you're 200 pounds. And you talking about this guy over here, oh, he's chubby, I don't like him. What? See, but that humility of understanding redemption, like I said, sometimes you see a fool who's rich, they inherited it, or the other one is they have a brilliant wife, and she's constantly covering for his idiocy, like you see in this particular example, and eventually she was rewarded, for constantly covering. And like I said, they didn't have any children together, so she was like, this is free and clear, this is mine, and I can still go have children with the actual king, right? Doesn't really get much better than that, right? So a woman of great understanding obviously is a great jewel and a great prize, but understand that the moves that Abigail made were made because she was a woman of understanding. You might read this and be like, this is why I'm going to go behind my man's back. Are you that woman? In the same instance, you might look at David, or you might even look at Abigail and like, yeah, this type of sister I want. Are you moving like David, though? Do you have the energy of David? In order to say, this is a proper mating. Maybe you really are Nepal type, because if you are still obsessed with the gifts and the accolades of the world, then who should really be your proper mate? Yes, you might stumble into Abigail because of, again, she might have looked at him, or the family might have looked at him like, girl, he got money, girl. You see, and she brought joy, but it was joy and that spirit of comfort and nurturing that was able to destroy the stronghold of the church, or the stronghold of the secular, and combine the joy with the heart, or the messianic energy of David. Now, I'm not saying that David was the full embodiment of Yahushua, Hamashiach, but he was on his way of really representing the foretelling of that, So, and of course, we know the house that, Yahushua comes from, right? So the value, again, that you get into that sense, a lot of times, even when you look at situations with like Ruth and Boaz, that's another one that a lot of Christians, they like to bring that story up. Ruth and Boaz, but are you really moving like Ruth? And understand that Ruth was a Moabite. So Ruth had a journey, that she had to go through in order to understand the quality of Yah. She was giving offerings to rocks, to stones, to idols, and then when she was rescued out of that city, she was married. So Ruth was actually a woman who was married. She was a widow, and her husband died, and then then you had Tob who wanted her, and so there were men like kind of fighting for her, over her, at one point. But you have to look at the quality of character in the person and really ask yourself, do I really mate with that? But like I said, the key I wanted to really bring up is that hasten aspect. Um, short engagement, long marriage. Long engagement, short marriage. We're in a time now where you see a righteous person and you have a certain feeling towards them, or not feeling, you're led to them by the Most High. You get a vision like, yeah, this is go for it, go. What are you pausing for? What are you waiting for? You're waiting for the spirit of rejection to set in. You're waiting for that spirit of, yeah, I knew I shouldn't have this because this, that. You start making up things, and the reality is your preparation comes in doing. And some things are just like that. How do I swim? Get in the water. How many seminars are you going to go on how to swim? Get in the water. How do I buy land and have a place to go to when things get super hectic? Go buy some land. Even if it's just a little tiny circle around a tree somewhere in the middle of nowhere, it's yours. You could build a tree house. I'm living here now, but you learn by getting into it. And if your father has not prepared you for this, then your husband must. And the first thing that you have to understand, especially for you sisters who come a little older, what you have shaped yourself into may not be what that man wants. And he's going to shape you into what it is that he wants. You might say, well, I've built this career or this person. I am in the shape of an accountant, or I'm in the shape of a project manager. And that man may say, I need a politician. I need a master chef. So he's going to take whatever that, I use Velcro strap. You might be shaped like this. He's going to take that and he's going to do this. He's going to bend it, and he's going to mangle it, and he's going to do all these different things. And though you were the straight line when you came in, now you're this. You see? Now, imagine how much this going from here to here would hurt if you're resistant. You see? Or if the world told you that your greatest value was this shape that they've helped you to shape yourself into. This is what you're supposed to be. You see? Well, if the world is your husband, then everything is fine. But once you realize that you're uncovered, and that is the greatest tragedy, to be an uncovered woman, then you say, you know what? Like Abigail did, let me fall to my face. Let me humble myself. Come down off this animal. And like she said, I will wash his feet. She said, let me abase myself so I can wash my master's feet. You see, that's how important it is. But also think about the responsibility put on David. So some of you men hearing this and say, that's what I'm talking about. These sisters got to be humble. Yeah, you're right. These sisters do have to be humble. There is a lot of arrogance that's out here. And that's why a lot of them are single. Nobody wants them. Nobody will ever want them. Anything beyond maybe an orgasm. You're absolutely right. However, are you a David? Have you been anointed for a great work that you are actually doing? Or are you still talking about, I'm trying to get myself ready? You're a clown. I'm sorry, brothers. I got to tell you, you're a clown. It doesn't take that long to get yourself ready. How long does it take to get yourself ready to be a husband? Less than a month. Less than a month. Especially if you're a certain age. You're 30 years old, you're 35 years old, you're 40 years old. I don't know if I'm ready. You're a clown. And I know some of the brothers who, I have great relationship with might be like, he just called me a clown. Yeah, I'm talking to you, brother, in all love. It's all love. You're a clown. Okay? You're going to be that 50, 60-year-old guy. She's going, yeah, when the sister come, when I'm ready. Stop. David was killing people when he was the preteen. He was out here killing stuff. How? Just, I'm doing it. And don't think he wasn't probably scarred up. He probably had scars and gashes all across his face, because that's how men do things. We trial and error. You get out there, you do it. You see? But this long time that we take, that's the spirit of rejection that's high in us. It's strong. And you have to cast out that spirit. You cast out that spirit by doing. When it pulls you back and says, you're not ready, who are you to say I'm not ready? Who is the world to say I'm not ready? Why would you use the standards of the world to judge a righteous act? Joining a family, joining a household is a righteous act. So the world can't tell you anything about that. Nothing. Your uncles and your aunties and all these different people who are not a part of this kingdom, none of their guidance is worth anything. Though you may listen to and be like, well, that makes sense. Things that Nepal said made sense. Who is this guy? Who's David? Who's Jesse? He's running from Saul. Yeah, that does kind of make sense. And I didn't ask you to do that. Feels like you shaking me down, to be honest. But what does divine wisdom tell you? You see, we're in a time right now where, people are going to get left outside of the ark because of that same spirit of, I ain't ready. I don't know. I'm just, you're on some I stuff. You're on some me stuff. You're not on some we stuff. And that's why you're getting caught out there. You see, David was snatching women. Oh, go get Abigail. Get this one over here too. And he went and got some more. Why? Because I am a nation builder. I'm not here playing with you. And my life is not centered around a woman, no matter how great and valuable she is. My life is centered around the mission and the vision and the purpose that the Creator has put into me. All of my energy goes there. So we're moving, so I'm going to call them and say, okay, come on, move with us. They say, no, all right, I'll go to another one. But I'm still moving on this purpose. If you're not moving on this purpose, then you'll always have excuses like, I don't think I'm ready. I don't know. That's weak, man. It's weak. All right. So I just wanted to share that. And I know, a little rough at the end, but, someone has to do it. Someone has to tell you. Someone has to love you enough to tell you where you're failing at and why you're failing. And like I said, when you get to a certain age, just understand, and for a certain quality of man that you may want, if he is a man that's a nation builder and he's doing things, he's not thinking about you. He's not going to be scouring and looking under rocks for you. You have to make yourself known. So dropping a hint, winking, smiling at him and expecting him to come over and say something. If you're 35 plus, you missed that boat by about 20 years. Okay, so I want you to be clear on that. You missed that boat by about 20 years. After a certain point, we don't have time for that, and it's actually kind of annoying because you're just playing games, you see? So, and then it just shows that you got too much ego. You're afraid to be rejected. You're afraid to come in and say, brother, I'm interested in you, and to hear what I'm going to say back, but you want me to go do it? You want me to face rejection, but you can't face rejection? So what does that already tell me how you'll be in a relationship? I already know that I'm dealing with an egomaniac. So I'm not interested. So double strike. So speak up and be known. You see, and like Abigail did, move with haste, because these are the times now. David was clear. This is wartime. We are in wartime right now. So you have to move with haste. All right. So everyone, give thanks for being present. And, again, we had some tech issues in the beginning, but we'll figure it out for the next one. Or maybe I just will not use that particular computer, But everyone, of course, be well. All of our new people, we have things that happen throughout the strong, some on this channel and some on other channels. I don't remember the dates and times for everything, so I'm not the announcement person. And peace to you as well, Cassie Derwin. I like saying her name. Yeah, so just stay tuned in for everything, and willfully this sparks some things in you, and we're able to see some value and understand that no matter how alpha you think you are, or how omega you think you are, that there is a time for women to make moves on their own, and willfully that they've been, cultivated in them so that they can do that with wisdom, man. It ain't just about you barking orders all the time and her sitting there dead silent, frying up cauliflower, for you all day. There comes a time too when she has to make her power moves. And, if you have those servants in that kingdom, she has something to rule and to even practice her ability of leadership with. All right. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your day and be well. All right. Peace. Peace.